I'd like to introduce the panel, and before I do, apologies on behalf of Nick Smith, Managing Director of Sheffield Studios, who couldn't make it this evening. Hopefully we'll be doing some follow-up on that after tonight. But without further ado, I would like to welcome my guests that are here in attendance today. We have Robert Laycock, CEO of Marlow Film Studios. We have Mark Sheffield, co-founder and Director of Creative Services at Pip Studios. We have Roger Morris. Who doesn't know Roger? But currently right now, he's Group Managing Director of Stage 50. And for those who do not know Stage 50, under their umbrella they have Winnersh Film Studios, High Wycombe Film Studios and Farnborough Film Studios. And then we have Abhi, Project Manager from Resource Productions, as well as Lilly, also from Resource Productions, but they're part of the Berkshire Film Office as well. So before I go into my deep dive of questions, I'd like to just have the panellists an opportunity to give a bit of background about themselves.
As Christina said, I'm Robert Laycock. I am many things, but Marlow is a project that's very personal to me. I started in production. I was an editor, so I spent many years grew up at Pinewood and Shepperton, cutting films. The last film I was involved in was Shakespeare in Love. Since then, I've been, my great-uncle was Ian Fleming, so I've been running the business affairs side of the Fleming estate for 25 years now. And that's sort of a PhD in business affairs and IP, which is quite useful. But having grown up in and around sets, I think it seemed very important to me 7 years ago when we started this project to deliver space that was very crew and filmmaker friendly, of a scale to meet the new demand and the new scale of production. So that's really me in a nutshell.
I'm Mark Sheffield. I'm one of the co-founders and director of Pip. I started my career back in 1990 at Pinewood in the cutting rooms. And then I moved into the post-production department in sound, where I became a sound mixer, and then I moved into various other companies before creating Pip back in 2020. And as you probably will see today, you probably get an understanding of what we actually do here in terms of audio localization, sound mixing, and then any other touch point in audio to support film production, certainly in the local area and on a global basis.
Yeah, I'm Roger Morris. I've been around a long time. I don't dye my hair, it's actually this colour. But it's a long journey from the last century to this. I've been in the industry for over 40 odd years. I started, believe it or not, working and managing theatres. And the experience of managing theatres with actors and all the technical things that go in a theatre are very similar to the film industry. So I went into the film industry as a producer and director, made loads of programmes, and used to do things for the Oak Grove Whistle Test and things like that. And then I got into the facility business, and not just the facility business studios, but got into post-production and ended up owning Teddington Studios. I had a company called Cast where we transmitted television channels. I was a managing director at Palace Group, who produced lots of films with the famous Nick Powell and Steve Woolley. And I went on to run my own operations, forming a company that did everything from duplication, across the board, everything you do to make a program, originating it, duplicating it, distributing it, the whole works. For the previous 12 years, I was the managing director of Elstree Studios, and I was credited as bringing it back to life. I'm not sure if it's currently in a strange position at the moment, and it won't catch fire anyway, that's for sure. If anybody knows, it has an asbestos problem at the moment. But I left Elstree because I thought 12 years was long enough to work with the studios, and I joined Stage 50. And I joined Stage 50 because it was quite revolutionary. And obviously, Elstree Studios was 100 years old, and Teddington was of a similar age. And I thought it'd be quite nice to actually work with a company that had a revolutionary new concept of having stages that you could prefabricate and put up in a hurry. and that's what we've been doing. And Stage 50 has some stages here that work from day one. In fact, as we were still building them, clients were working in them. So it's been quite a journey. It's a very fast-track company. We have 2 stages at Farnborough, and they're very busy. We've got a big production in at the moment, and the stage is down here. You may have driven past it, the large building lit up on the way as you came up this road to Pip. And we also
the one with the fancy trees?
Sorry?
And the vertical lights?
No, that's the nursery.
Was it? Oh, it was beautiful.
That's right. But we've also got studios at Farnborough. We've put 2 up at Farnborough, and we're building at Wickham, and we're hoping to get the planning permission through. We've got everything in place. And we also have studios we've just put up at Bovingdon for Amazon. So fast track, revolutionary new studio concept. They go up very quickly. They are real studios. They're not temporary studios. They're put up quickly, but they're not temporary. They're long-term studios, and they're prefabricated. So that's what I'm doing at the moment for my sins.
Thank you, Roger. Abhi?
Hi, I'm Abhi Arumbakkam, and I am here with my colleague Lilly, and we are from Resource Productions. Resource Productions is a social enterprise based in Slough. We aim to diversify the creative industries by creating content that challenge existing perceptions and making you think, hopefully. My role at Resource Productions is that I'm a project manager. I work on 2 projects primarily. One of them is funded by the Rothschild Foundation, where I work with schools and trying to develop interest and encourage engagement in the arts, film particularly, and music. The other project is that I'm also in charge of talent development at Resource Productions, and at present I am developing our documentary strand of activities.
I won't go on about Resource Productions, Abhi's just mentioned it all, but my name is Lilly and I run the Berkshire Film Office. But set about 4 years ago, and I started
it as an apprentice. Oh, there we go. I started as an apprentice with a former colleague, and our whole sort of remit is that we work with the 6 councils that make up Berkshire to sort of highlight Berkshire as a place to come and work and film. And we work with the councils to make sure that they're film friendly, which I'm sure you all are aware of the term. So yeah, that's what I do, and I work with Abhi and Resource, and we sort of build our vision, mission and values into the project, trying to get local crew and local talent onto the productions that come and film in Berkshire.
Thank you, ladies. Before I do my first question, I actually was dared by Mark to try and explain, after a glass of wine, what SIMPTY actually stands for. And you actually can't be on the board if you can't say SIMPTY fully after a few drinks. FYI, it's an initiation process. But it stands for the Society...
Mild, actually, isn't it?
Quite mild. It is quite mild. So on that note, it's the Society of Motion Picture and Television Engineers. We're a society with over 800 patents on the standardizations of the workflows of what we do. And after that, I can have a tequila. Celebrate. Right, so we'll start with the first question. I'm going to keep it light, and we're going to have a group conversation as opposed to direct questionings. Now, chaps, what's the scoop? What is going down in Thames Valley? What's happening right now? There's a lot of individual things that I'd love to hear on your perspective and scope of where we are right now.
Who are you going to ask?
It's for whoever answers first.
Well, I can make a comment, which is it's been branded as Hollywood-on-Thames. Well, we're not Hollywood-on-Thames. We're the British film industry. We're not trying to emulate Hollywood. We don't have loads of people lying in the street on spice. You know.
You sure?
Maybe I'm in the wrong place, but Winnersh doesn't anyway. But it's actually the British film industry that we're all part of. And I think the great thing is this golden triangle. We call it the golden triangle, which is another, I suppose, wrong thing to use. But it's actually all about the fact that this is a part of London which is I say part of London, extension of the London industry that can accommodate studios. And the property and the getting here, the connectivity is really brilliant. So we're in this triangle, and we've all realised that this is the hub of potentially the south of England British film industry. And I say south of England because I know that people who are trying to make Scotland the home of British film industry, and there's Welsh the home of British film industry, and there's even a studio in Sunderland now proposed. But it is important because we are not Hollywood-on-Thames, we're the British film industry on Thames. That's my opinion. What do you think?
I think we're giving people more choice as well, because there seems to be a lot of talent that works outside of London. And obviously since COVID changed the way we all work, and when Pip was built, we were seeing more inquiries from certainly sound editors and mixers that worked locally that wanted to come and work out of Pip. So I guess we've given those freelancers and industry people more choice, but we've also given our clients more choice because they were crying out for capacity. And our main clients that we've attracted are Universal, Sony and Paramount, as well as the streamers. So we've attracted those big companies into Winnersh. And we can work alongside Roger at Stage 50 or Shinfield or Marlow Studios as well. We're sort of in the middle of everyone to accompany anything they may need help with.
And Marlow's an interesting one, Robert, for the scoop, given the quiet, beautiful town that it is.
Yeah, and that's why we've got such an exciting scheme that's designed by Sterling Prize-winning architects and the master planner of London Olympics, and as well as the very technical people that you'd expect to design a facility for the 21st century, and it's really a campus approach. But I think just in terms of the scoop, the thing that people are getting wrong is a sort of order of magnitude mistake. So we for the first time in human history, half the world's household have high-speed broadband connecting them. And we all know that the killer app is not Teams meetings, but the things that you stream when you've got leisure time. And we're all privileged. We've all grown up in the UK, where we've had 100 years of the BBC and 60 years of Bond and 50 of Star Wars and all those sort of things, all being made here. But we have a local production environment which is celebrated world over. I mean,
Let's not forget Doctor Who.
Well, that's very true. But Doctor Who looks pretty modest in production spend nowadays when people are spending a huge amount. And that's the other dimension: is shows are not now domestic shows; they are designed for global audiences. And actually, that's our USP in this country. We're very, very good at making global blockbusters, the tent poles, as they say in California. They're the things that hold everything up. And you just have to look at every decade. There's a beacon product, scrolling back from Mission Impossible, Harry Potter, Star Wars prequels, all the Superman films in the 80s when I was a wee little thing.
They were the best.
Yeah, but also then you add on top Game of Thrones, House of Dragons, and all the other things that we do brilliantly. And it's no surprise that on Netflix's service, the biggest successes are usually British successes. I mean, Crown, Witcher, Bridgerton. There are loads of them, and so I think that this, that what's really exciting is that people have finally woken up to that this is a really serious industry. It's $6 billion of inward investment this last year, and it's probably going to be $10 billion of US dollars coming in very, very quick order. It depends how quickly we can provide the facilities. Because we've got all the talent, we've got the ability to train up the next generation. It's just making sure that we don't lose our lead advantage to other territories, which will eat our lunch if we're not careful.
If we weren't recording, I'd high-five you for that British comment. Absolutely. It makes you proud, actually.
It certainly does.
Let's not forget our roots and our heritage. So to that point, what kind of facilities are being built, and who do you anticipate us attracting in Thames Valley?
Well, I think you can see the facilities we've built. I mean, in terms of who we're attracting here, it's all the big players, isn't it, in terms of the Hollywood studios and the streamers. We're trying to expand our business to accommodate different revenue lines. For instance, downstairs, we've built 10 extra rooms to accommodate and help out with local studios. If they're shooting productions, they need facilities here. In terms of add-ons, I don't know what you guys would be adding on to your businesses.
Well, Mark, for our virtual audience, could you elaborate on the facilities that you actually have at PIP?
Yep, so we've got 6 sound stages. They're Dolby Atmos aligned for theatrical mixing and home entertainment mixing. There are hybrid studios. We've built them of a size that we can mix theatrically and home end, and they're also IMAX approved as well as their edit suites that are adaptable for smaller audio jobs, conforms, edits, and QC work. And our core business, if you may have been told on the tour, is audio localization. So we mix films into maybe 27 different languages for the big studios, and some of the titles we've done over the last year, we did Maverick for Paramount and Spider-Man No Way Home for Sony, and Jurassic World for Universal. So we're enticing big titles into the building and servicing audio on a global scale.
To play devil's advocate, because this isn't in my line of questioning,
Yeah.
you mentioned about, the Hollywood clients.
Yeah.
How about in regards to my question of who we're attracting or anticipating to in regards to genre or content? Do you guys have any vision of that beyond, say, the tentpole productions, if we think about global audiences or the adoption and interest of docuseries, for example?
Well, I think that it's the amazing thing we have now is this ecosystem, really, and you can just show the strength in this room of people who are in the creative industries and know how vital they are. So it's not that what's really difficult to express is if you sit in Burbank or Studio City, they really say we want to come to the UK first for whether it's very expensive content, but we also have a whole cohort of people who make incredible shows that travel all around the world already, and Netflix alone is spending 17 billion in 2022, Disney around the same. So if you add it up, there's about $120 billion of content and that's across all the pieces. It's not just big, glossy shows. It's all the small things. But there's an opportunity for the UK because traditionally we've accounted for about 20% of global box office. GDP is about 2%. So this part of our economy is about 10 times oversized. And if you calculate the $5-6 billion that comes in, that's it's a very small fraction of the available spend that's happening now, and there's a queue of people waiting to get in. So whether it's finding the voices to make documentaries or animation, it's all of our challenges to build the ecosystem where that really maintains that first choice. Because I was in one of the majors 2 weeks ago, and they said, well, we're struggling to send people to Australia because the people who decide where to go, they don't really want to go and spend all that time away from their friends. They'll come to London, by which they mean this part of the world, because no one actually makes big stuff in London anymore. It's all M4, M40, M1 corridor. It's that's what's so remarkable, and in an era when there's not so much great news in the economy, to have something that punches above its weight. I mean, financial services are about 16% of global GDP. I mean, we have such a huge opportunity, and my joke is really. The Americans are very proud of their global reserve currency, but the UK has the global reserve culture in a way that we've had half a millennia of Shakespeare, and so I think it's a thought-provoking point. We all tend to be not very ambitious as Brits, but I think it'd be a terrible shame to lose out on this opportunity because it's a really big opportunity.
Yeah, I think the industry. I remember the CBI. Produced a report showing that we were one of the only growth industries in the UK. And we ranked alongside the pharmaceutical industry and at that time, the aviation industry. Obviously, the aviation industry has plunged down, but we are a growth industry. And we can maximize the talent. We have to convince politicians we're not a flaky industry, that we're a proper commercial industry that makes an awful lot of money. That can be quite difficult. We don't necessarily get mentioned in dispatches, if you like, by politicians, but in fact we are just so important for the UK economy. I think in particular that, as you say, it's an ecology thing. I think here Mark and Nigel have done a great job because we're creating, if you like, enclaves of production facilities, and there's nothing wrong with calling it facilities because that's what we are, and we support the origination of product. And I call it product because a lot of the people who invest in it call it product, and we actually sort of make sure that they can come to somewhere where they can work and achieve all the things they want. It used to be, for instance, that if you recorded a film, you would actually sort of send off the soundtrack to be mixed down in Hollywood. Now it tends to be that they're quite prepared to mix it down in the UK. And so we're getting there.
Downstairs even.
Sorry?
Downstairs.
Downstairs, indeed. And I think it's all changed. Obviously, it's not just a result of our amazing skills in the UK, it's a result of the fact that the industry has actually changed from major theatrical releases to streaming. I mean, streaming is and high-end television production has actually driven a lot of this. And also, you've got the convergence of television and film. Obviously, electronic convergence and also distribution convergence of the way that product is put out into the marketplace. We are becoming a world leader for content production. We have a lot of not just the talent behind the camera, we also have the talent in front of the camera and the writers and everything else. So we are on a high at the moment. It would be a great shame to let it go. We must actually push it harder with the political masters to make sure that they realize what great work our industry is actually doing. And I think I must mention the Royal Television Society, because that has been pushing very, very hard and very helpful in our industry to actually make people understand we're not just suffering from, if you like, political ineptitude. We're also suffering from a talent shortage, and we're trying very hard, all of us here today, to actually encourage more training in our industry. And obviously you can't just train people overnight and they pop out and they're filmmakers or production people. It takes time, and they have to be mentored and things like that. So there's a whole process. So it's a case of actually thinking ahead and actually saying, well, these people aren't going to pop out and be useful for another 5 years. And if we're going to maintain our industry in the UK, we have to do something about it.
You make some excellent points, Roger, about training and skills gap that I'll be coming back to. But for now, for the next line of questioning about facilities and services and product, so the BFI have claimed, and don't quote me word for word, but our industry will be one of the top 3 revenue generators for our economy over the next 5 years. So absolutely, let's ride that wave. That's an incredible statistic. So to that end, my next question is, the UK has built a strong reputation for high quality production, which Robert eloquently said with some samples there with Bond, etc. With such high level investment by the industry, which I understand is now reaching 13 billion by 2026, by the government and the British Film Commission. So my question to the group would be, what opportunity does that give us to develop our facilities and service offerings as never before? And will there be services and facilities that the more established studios cannot offer, given that these are new studios or expanding facilities as a result of investment?
Yes, I think one of the things that we've noticed is that the streamers, whilst producing high-end drama on their roster at the moment, are taking if you like, a check on what they're doing, what they're producing, what they're investing in. And believe it or not, some of them are actually moving closer to linear broadcasting in the sense that they're considering everything from news to shiny floor programs to linear TV programs, not necessarily just sticking with streaming stuff which they can pump out all over the place. So, and localization is a great word that they use at the moment. So they're actually looking at, as a managing director of Sony said, if you want to go far, go local. And the idea that you're producing for the community you're actually working in. So I think we're going to see more investment as well in what I call standard British content by the major investors, and not just by the BBC and ITV and Channel 4 and Channel 5 and Sky. We're going to see that, and I think that's exciting as well. And I think as a business is plural, we should be looking at making sure that we can accommodate that type of production as well, that don't necessarily have the £170 million budget. They have the much smaller budgets, and they are necessarily, they underpin our industry, and they also, and I'll come back to training again, they're a great place for people to start off in the industry.
Any more for any more?
Well, I mean, I'm going to point to your field. So you know, anybody who's been in an LED volume understands what a revolution that potentially is. And you know, obviously the big beasts in that is ILM in Manhattan Beach and Burbank.
Even Pinewood.
Yeah, no, exactly. And there's that. You know, they had Apple had a stage at Aylesbury even. So actually, there's more virtual production stages here in the UK, and more. The more important thing is the challenger tech here with Brompton and all the people who are working really hard to figure out the complicated issues around using LED as a tool. But the really exciting thing about that, from a production point of view, is that our VFX lineup is pretty much second to none creatively, and it mirrors very much on-camera trades and off-camera trades. But so there's an enormous UK opportunity there, because it's a kind of marriage of all the skills. And you know, a lot of VFX stuff was pioneered here. It was you know, even in Mission Impossible 1, they were inventing amazing technology for pixel tracking, which everybody thought was magic. But now it's a really sophisticated industry that's already here. So that's one of the things. While at Marlow we're quite agnostic about LED, we're, you know, a stage is a stage, and you can put a volume in. We're building one volume stage, but I think that's a real thing that the UK has a chance to also show global leadership in. And the point about it is, it's really a change in the way that you think about production, because you have to drag your post-production into pre-production, which is quite a complicated thing to get your head around. But you still need, you need all the facilities built so that you can have everybody working together in harness to try and make the best product.
I think that's
if I may say, I have a thing about being a pioneer. I don't want to be a pioneer. I like to buy the Mark III that's already been proven and works. And I think with VR, at the moment it's a very expensive device. We've got technology that's marching on very fast. And I remember going to IBC many years ago, and they used to ring a bell when something was sold. And it was a company called Ampex, who've now disappeared. And they used to ring this bell when something was sold, and you used to buy it, and it would last you, and you'd say, well, I'm going to depreciate it over 5 years, because that's the technology length, the life of the technology. And it went on, and then it became a bit later, it goes, I'm depreciating over 3 years, because that's the length the technology lasts. And then you get to the point where you're saying, I'm going to depreciate it over 3 months, because the technology is moving on so fast that if you invest in certain elements of the technology, you're going to be blown away. And so it's an expensive tool, it's an expensive device. The costs will come down. I don't know if you noticed that Coronation Street actually used VR recently to do a scene.
Production Park.
Yeah. And so it's very important. I think we have to, it's great. The Mandalorian, believe it or not, a lot of the effects, they boasted about the fact the Mandalorian was done with great VR effects and everything else. They had to go and do a lot of them in post-production. So I think it's important to realize that you don't necessarily want to be a pioneer. You want to actually follow it, and at the right moment take advantage of it, but the price has to be right. I'm talking from a business point of view now. The price has to be right. It has to be right for the clients, the right sort of clients using it, etc. So, and it's been around, believe it or not, for some time. I mean, it's not unique. While as LED is fine, if you take the Crown, because I did the Crown up at Elstree, all their effects were done traditionally with green screen, and lots of Manitous holding up green screens around the sites. So that's the way it was done.
Zodiac, I think, is the first film I have recollection of using LED.
Right.
Actually.
Yeah.
Which is, don't know if anyone remembers that, but it's a fair old film before Gravity.
Now, can I point out something else? Because I like getting a bit of paper out and calculating what you lose. And one of the things about LED, whereas it's wonderful, is that we have a whole industry that builds fantastic sets, and it builds fantastic this and fantastic 3D elements, sort of props in your studio and when you're working in a studio. So if you try to visualize what would you actually use it for, where is it in the script? Do you write a script to use VR, or do you write a script for content and entertainment value and creative value? And I think it's very difficult to suddenly make it so that you're writing for technology as opposed to writing for the content. And I think people should actually realize that it's only one element of the ability to achieve your creative spectrum, if you like, and not necessarily the be-all and end-all of our industry.
You're absolutely not wrong. And I do have VP questions, but I also want to avoid being the VP person, that this doesn't become a VP panel. So, before we go into the depths of and dark of virtual production, because it's as difficult as it is wonderful in many ways, I'd like to focus on the studio part before we go into that world. So one of my last remaining questions before we change the topic would be, other than our pedigree and heritage, what else would attract Hollywood to filming in the UK?
People.
I have a good answer, but I want to hear from you guys.
It's totally about talent. I mean, this year is the 60th anniversary of the last time any film won Best Actress and Supporting Actress, which was Tom Jones in 1963. And they're saying that this coming Oscars is going to be the first time that's been beaten. So, talent is what we're about. And I think that the Screen Skills forecast a 30,000 crew deficit in the next 10 years.
See, I heard 40.
Well, depends how many studio facilities we build. But that's what, I mean, I think in my experience, it's a very egalitarian industry. There are a few challenges. We need to get more diversity into it. And that's a really exciting challenge for all of us. But just trying to make sure it's as welcoming as possible. And we're all, I know this is a uniquely generous industry in terms of passing on knowledge. It's where we probably all learn, but it's being mentored by really great people who did important things.
Yeah, I think we're all quite responsible for that with the next generation. I mean, we've been very lucky at Pip that we've got a very experienced crew, and our crew have followed us from other facilities. We've worked together for some of us 20 years, so they pass on knowledge to the younger generation that we're now employing, and we just need to make sure that we're bringing younger people through year on year to learn, really, because if there's going to be 40,000 people in deficit in terms of talent, there's going to be a big problem. Does that cause problems later on in production that we're not supplying talented crew?
Christina, can I make a point here?
You may, as my friend at the front.
We've had a problem with the Association of Camera Operators where we've gone to some of the big companies and asked them if they will put some money in so that they can assist mentoring.
I think we've got a mic for you here, Jamie, actually, if that helps.
So we've had a problem getting the big companies to help financially with mentoring. And I think it would be a really, really good thing that we all are aware of the fact that I don't think enough energy is put in, or enough thought is put in by the big companies to get over your problem of 30 or 40,000 people being needed. They really do need to put their hands in their pockets. People don't come from anywhere. And if I, for example, just as an example, if I was to mentor somebody into becoming a camera operator, which I'm very, very happy to do, but then either I need to be paid to do it or assisted to do it, which I can do in a sort of semi-retired position, if you like, but the person that's going to do the job needs to be paid as well. And that's my point. The big companies need to put their hands in their pockets.
I wholeheartedly agree with you. And we're going to put a pin on that because that's going to come up after my next question, actually, and then we can bring that up as a wider discussion at the end of the panel.
Can I mention something, by the way, because I wasn't trying to be negative about VR, because we're actually building a VR studio, a stage. But I just do think that one has to allow for every requirement of a production. I think the other fantastic thing about this area, by the way, is not just studios, it's about the location. The UK has fantastic locations. And everybody's trying to make it easier for people to shoot. They've passed legislation locally to allow you to close roads off and things like that, which is really important. We did it in Hertfordshire. Kent has got it. We've got it now here, I believe. And obviously, it makes a lot of sense because it's if you think about it, a production doesn't just necessarily take place entirely in a stage. It shoots on location. And we have some fabulous locations, fabulous buildings. We've got some crumbling buildings as well that they can use. And we've got waterways and you name it. And it's easy to get, or it used to be easy to go into Europe, to shoot in Europe as well. So, that's why people like coming to the UK. It's the talent, the location, the ease, and of course the most important thing is Harvey Nichols. I say Harvey Nichols because I actually had a client who said, my star and his wife want to know how far it is from Harvey Nichols. So you get little elements like that come into the equation about where people want to work. So somebody pointed out to me there's a Harvey Nicks in Birmingham because
What about price, chaps? Anyone got any thoughts on price? Given how built up Hollywood actually is and how competitive it's become, it's even in terms of residential living is borderline unaffordable for most.
Yeah.
Is price a winning factor for us, given the expansion of our studio facilities, the amount of land that we have, the people on top?
Well, I think starting from the point of film industry is only accidentally in Hollywood. I mean, that's the really important thing to say. It was really to do with the first half of the 20th century being riven by wars in this continent. So, I mean, it was always really full of Europeans and Brits who had to go to the west coast of America because, also the sunshine there helped with, with very kind of lights that needed the cameras that needed a lot of exposure on the set, on the film. So
300 days a year, I understand, or something.
Yeah. But nowadays we have the miracle of electric light, and they were kind of escaping Edison's patents on which was he had a good grip on the East Coast. So I think absolutely, if you speak to the majors in the US, they say it's really difficult to shoot anything in California. And strangely, they have this phrase runaway production, which means that flight to cheaper locations, so Canada, Mexico, Australia. But they don't really think of the UK as a runaway base because it's their alternate. And there is a premium because British shows tend to make more money than you could analyse that a lot, but there was, if you look at the amount of production investment that goes into the UK, there's outperformance. And there's a complex environment in the US with unionized Teamsters. You can't move a truck without really complicated arrangements. But here I think there's the combination of culture, education, and also just a kind of different working environment. It's sort of. It sort of helps that we're away from the business affairs department of Hollywood because, nowadays there are such beer moths about, every cent has to do a particular job. And actually, having witnessed in the summer some stuff going on in California, it gets really difficult to do stuff there. And, the can-do stuff, having seen what amazing stuff that goes on downstairs, that would be a much, much more ridiculously expensive process in California because of land prices, because of all sorts of other things.
The other thing is one of the things we do here, which I'm always amazed that the Americans haven't really seriously done in California, is we've got these fantastic tax breaks. And that's the other big attraction, the tax breaks. We've just done a survey of tax breaks around Europe and everything else, and some are capped, up to 10 million. We haven't got any cap on our tax breaks. And so it's fantastic. And so obviously we will get caught up. I mean, other people want our business. We can't just be taking all the business, and other countries aren't going to give fantastic incentives. So we've got to be on top of it, and we've got to be ahead of it. And I think we have to make sure we don't make it restrictively hard to actually work in the UK. And there are a number of initiatives that people are pushing at the moment that could make it hard to work in the UK. There's a number of agreements being negotiated. So we don't want to kill kill the golden goose. I mean, we want to allow the golden goose to lay more eggs. And I think that that's really key, in that we keep the tax breaks up, we make sure that tax breaks keep up with other tax breaks that have been offered in other countries. I know people who are going and shooting in Romania and Bulgaria at the moment. They do get decent tax breaks there, but we know there are problems there with crew and everything else, and some of the local activities are not so savoury. But I think that's what we've got to be ahead of the game. I think one of the things the RTS can do is regularly brief the government on what we think we need, because I keep on about politicians, but politicians seem to not understand what our industry actually needs. And I think if we're going to stay on top of our game, we have to keep that information flow going back to the government.
Pandemic year one is a great example of that. Pandemic year one is a great example of that, not paying any universal credit if you're not a PAYE. Most people in film are not. It took them a year to figure that out, reimburse people. But on a lighter note, Robert made an excellent point that actually reminded me of something quite beautiful about the British culture and what we bring to the film industry. And we're actually, I believe, the origin of the wellbeing facilitator, which is a role to help with mental health and bullying and breaks on set. And that is something that has been derived from our work in culture and conditions that is now becoming a global role. So another USP for our belt. Now, before I go into training and skills gap, which I'm very keen to do, I can finally offer my one and only virtual production question. But I'm going to focus this on studio specific as opposed to the creative licenses and restrictions potentially behind the technology in use. So my question would be, with remote production as well within this mix, not just virtual, becoming increasingly popular, are those service offerings being considered within the studio builds and expansions in terms of its network and infrastructure? Or is it still considered an add-on to a soundstage?
I think totally, and I'm sure this is stage 50 at the same time, is if you're designing something for the 21st century, you have to think about, just for sustainability purposes, what those buildings will be used for in 30, 50 years' time. I mean, much as I love Pinewood, working at Pinewood now feels like it's a sort of curious mix of unplanned and so I think that, just looking backwards, the sort of facilities you put in have to have huge amounts of flexibility. So if digital is in vogue, then you can repurpose spaces to do those things. And we all know how hard it is to get dark fibre in and out of places. So certainly at Marlow, that's one of the things that we really wanted to get, is the nuts and bolts of future-proofing. And we for all the reasons that we've touched on, virtual production is not necessarily yet a universally accepted thing. So, I mean, the power requirements are huge. The sustainability, the panels, megawatt of every of power just to light a 27-meter panel is quite a commitment, and you really have to have the creatives trained to do it properly. And if you speak to Lucasfilm, they say that on The Mandalorian, about 50-50 of the directors, they love it as a tool or hate it as a tool, and it's really Marmite at the moment. People are really pioneering things, but I totally agree. You buy a mature product. You don't rush into ordering 15 of something that is still in product development.
I think remote production is very interesting because I'm a bit of a nerd myself, and I love the fact that when I'm going through with some of the lighting people at IBC, where touch my 10K, and you say it's cold, it's an LED 10K, and it's linked through to the Sony Venice camera. And it's linked through to the Sony Venice camera, and the DOP can use the iPad, and he can actually almost grade the shot with the camera and the iPad. And there's also fiber that can go back to post-production. And you think, that's really amazing. And that is really game-changing. And then you take on top of that, you take outside broadcast operations, and they now shoot football games from Gray's Inn Road. And they do Love Island from Gray's Inn Road. How do they do it from Gray's Inn Road? Remotely. They're remotely controlling the whole gallery is remote in Gray's Inn Road for Love Island. And so all these things are happening at the moment, people don't realise. So we are trying to make sure that when we put things together that are, if you like, for television, film, high-end drama, shiny floor, sports, broadcast, news, whatever it is we're doing, we want to make sure that we keep the connectivity there, because it's all about connectivity at the end of the day. It's all about having that broadband connectivity and be able to do those things. And also, similarly with sound, isn't it? I mean, you take feeds in from all over the place.
Well, yeah, we do a lot more remote reviewing now since the pandemic. Obviously, the clients used to fly in on a regular basis, and COVID changed that for us. We are starting to see them come back, but we were having Clearview Flex in all of our sessions on the final day of print mastering, where we'd be sending the feed back to studios in territory all around the world, and they'd sit in their studio and listen to it in 5.1 as we were playing out from the console downstairs. So, yeah, it's definitely there in post, but probably not as much as what it is in production at the moment.
So moving away from facilities and tech, I'd like to focus more on people. And one of the questions would be, given what we've learned and what we've experienced with different working styles after the pandemic, how are we taking those lessons now with these new facilities and studios in terms of people for accessibility, whether that's equality, diversity and inclusion, disabilities, different working styles, job sharing?
We actually, as ladies, you haven't spoken at all.
No, carry on.
You know,
If I can just say, there is a definite difficulty, or it is identified and thankfully being addressed. There is an issue with diversity and equity and inclusion in the industry, but it is being addressed at a planning stages. Some of the studios that are applying for planning permission, for instance, they have the section 106, I believe, which is a provision that they are building into their planning proposals while submitting it to the council, which includes provisions like which shows their commitment to the community.
Wow.
So which shows what it is that they're going to do for the community. It could include, for instance, building creches.
Section 106, you
yes.
say? I'll be tattooing that on my body. Wow. It's very good. And creche, that's a great example.
It's a great example that's already been done in...
Well, I know, I think you guys here have got a creche on site, so it's already sort of starting to amalgamate.
So, and as you know, long working hours, there's no wraparound childcare, and I can talk from personal experience. Anybody who's a parent would know that if you have to have, evening or early morning wraparound childcare, you need to have you need to book your space in there all the time, and it doesn't happen. But the work comes in fits and starts, in feasts and famines. What are you going to do? And so you need to be paying to keep your place there. And so that's where childcare comes in, precious come in very, very handy.
So that should be a staple, really.
That should be a staple. And it's amazing. It's taken so long for us to address that, identify that and address that and build it in. So that's a good thing,
Yeah.
That's diversity. And Lily, do you want to talk about?
I mean, all I was going to say is sort of, I started in 2019. I had 1 year, obviously working with the film office, and then pandemic hit, so everyone started working from home, and a lot of my friends work in corporate, and their lives have completely changed. They work from home now. What I've noticed is I've been on set during COVID, and it's a very slow, painful process where department comes in, do their thing, another one comes in and out. And I think that for many industries, the pandemic has opened up this massive sort of world of home working and mental health and well-being and things like that. But I think what I've experienced was on set the other day, and it was amazing. Someone called Rap, and I've never seen a crew move so fast. And they were all on top of each other, and obviously all wearing face masks and things, because it's quite a high-level production. But I think that that's one thing that shouldn't be lost. is the sheer speed a team can work together. And a lot of production managers now have met a few people when they work from home, and you can do that job remotely. You know, any location manager knows that it's a laptop in a car and a phone, and you know, so it's a very on-the-go job. But I do think that many jobs have evolved from the pandemic to work from home. And I feel personally, just by being on set and watching how people work, I don't think that can happen with the film industry, especially being on set. It's a very hands-on, full-on job, especially for young people when they're coming in and they're starting off in the ranks. I think it's you need to learn that set etiquette, and that's how you start out. And then as you progress, maybe you pick your hours and it changes and shifts. But I think personally for the industry, I don't think you can do it from home. Obviously, there's all this types of production and virtual production and whatnot going on. But I just think that the way it's done is very a physical job, and it is long hours. And I think that hasn't been lost from the pandemic. And I think it's part of that British culture of the film industry that it's very, you know, people are there and they work long hours. And yeah, the pandemic hasn't changed that. It did for however long we were in a lockdown for. And then the second, you know, the British Film Commission released those guidelines, it was straight back to it.
So we've talked about learning on set, and we've given quite a hefty number on a skills gap in the industry right now. What training initiatives are there, and also that studios are offering to help facilitate that skills gap and professional career development as well? Because a lot of people are being promoted very quickly and early to deal with that demand, and that has its own repercussions.
Yeah.
Well,
Sorry. I'll pick up on what you said about having mentors and being able to and being paid to mentor somebody. The fact is, people are so busy working, they don't have the time to go on training courses. Right now, I mean, for instance, I have a training course that I'm running next week, and the person that was supposed to work with me is a DOP. He's just been pulled away, on a production, and I'm left with nobody to run the course for next week. So and obviously he has to prioritize that, and people don't have the time to allow somebody to come and shadow them, to mentor somebody. There is going to be when I was in the car, it was 20,000. It's already gone up to 40,000. So who knows where it's going to be? It cannot be underestimated. And
Can I make a point here? Because it is impossible for professionals who are working to have students on set, right? For a number of reasons. They're working on a very expensive product, and there's insurance, there's the legal issues, the whole thing. So 10 years ago, I started a college called the Elstree University Technical College, which was for film, television, and theatre vocational studies. And it's now called the Elstree Screen Academy. It's just been awarded by the National Film School, the BFI, and Screen Skills, a centre of excellence. And it has about 500 students there. We've had about 4,500 students pass through. We're talking about using the same model elsewhere. It's government funded, so you don't have to pay to go there. It's not a private school, it's a public. You can go there if you're... And we aim for a diverse groups of people to study there. We're looking at having an older group, sort of 19 to 25-year-olds, so we're, if you like, repurposing some people. But we have tried very hard. I set up a thing called VOCAT, which was all the studios in the area in Hertfordshire, with the BBC, Sky, Leavesden, you name it, and we had UK Screen Skills, UK Screen Alliance, and various other groups, Universal Pictures, a whole host of people. It's called VOCAT. And the idea was to put students out into companies, and we were trying to identify how we do it. We managed to get some government money, and we have actually hired, as this gentleman said about being paid, we have hired, because it was determined by Screen Skills. There was a shortage of people doing grip and lighting, so they gave us some money, and we've employed some experts from the industry to come in and train them how to track lay and how to do grip. So I think it has to be that sort of initiative. You cannot expect a major film to have a problem set up for them with having to run a student training course on set. I think you have to train them off set, and then they will be useful when they actually go to the set, and they receive a certificate, they're properly trained, they know what they're doing. Some of the things in our industry are quite dangerous as well. It's not a case of actually sort of going in there, because we're using quite heavy equipment. We're doing things that have rollers, and the health and safety issues that we have with our industry are quite serious. So I think the way forward there is actually to encourage the government to spend money on training by getting people paid who are experts in the industry to mentor the students. At the same time, with the college, they do traditional college work, so they're doing their exams in traditional education, but at the same time they're doing vocational courses. It's won quite a few awards, and we've had people going off to universities. Some have gone directly into the industry, some have gone into the sound industry, some have gone into post, some have gone into set building, some in hair and makeup and things like that. So it's a whole, across the spectrum, it's across that 200 credits you get on the end of the film. We're trying to highlight who you're sort of hunting for. So that's what we're doing there. We're trying to do that with Stage 50 as well. What we want to do with Stage 50 is we are doing the same thing. In fact, I've got the
Roger, I'm sorry to interrupt. We've got 4 minutes left.
Oh, I do apologize.
And I'd like to throw in one more curveball.
I do go on. I do apologise.
Well, I normally like to listen to you, but I'm so keen to get this curveball out. So, without further ado, before we run out of time, so we can see the demand of production in the industry. We can see that we're facilitating it with studio expansion and growth. But presumably, this in turn not only encourages growth of jobs, but the greater skills gap, which means we may not be able to service demand. So, in regards to this dilemma, what are we doing individually in this panel to address that? From training, skills cap, equality, diversity and inclusion.
Well, don't tell anybody, but that's what I'm most excited about. I mean, we're going to be 18 stages, 1.5 million square feet of space, and really beautifully designed. But the thing I'm most excited about is our, a building outside the secure perimeter, which is doing very much what we would all like to see, is take the sink or swim out of people being taught in and around the industry. So it'll be a very useful facility, but it's designed to be, we won't be awarding certificates. What we are is inviting other people to come in. But where I do disagree with you is about, kind of traineeship on set is a really important thing. I fundamentally disagree that it's not a learning environment. And the problem is, as the BFI have discovered with Lucasfilm, if you put 30, 40 people on set, the HODs are under huge stress to try and mentor them. So what we're going to do is in the academy building is have a place where students are mentored and their well-being and pastoral care is thought about. I mean, I wish someone had taught me how to stop traffic or what a health and safety risk audit was. You were expected to know those things, otherwise you'd be thrown off set. A film crew is often like a royal court, is that you've got to figure all the levels of hierarchy. And as a young person, it's really difficult. So even those kind of basics of, looking people in the eye, don't say something dumb in front of the wrong person. I quiver with horror of some of the things I said when I was a young person to HODs, and just, there are all those headwinds to getting young people and people who retrain to be confident and competent on set, and that's what I'm most excited about the opportunity for us at Marlow.
Okay, I think that's a wrap. I think we got time. 2 more minutes? 2 minutes for questions in the audience. Okay, who wants to be the first to kick us off? Can we have the mic at the front, please, Stephen? This chap. Thank you.
Well, I'm going to be too close to the speaker. I'll face this way. It's been very interesting. It's a very quick question. Who owns you all? Are you British owned or conglomerate owned, or are you kind of cottage industries? How does it pan out?
Well, Marlow's a startup, so it's drawn skill sets across real estate, sort of central government and industry, and we're very well funded from UK sources at the moment. So it'll as we evolve into the construction phase, we'll go to capital markets on that.
Pip's owned by the board of directors, so one private equity firm, an individual investor, and myself, Ali, and Nigel, the co-founders, are also part owners as well. So it's like a small family, really.
Yeah, Stage 50 is owned by people from the film industry. I mean, the person who started it was quite a well-known prop maker, believe it or not. And I'm from the film industry. The rest of the team, we've got a location manager, a top location manager from the film industry with us. We've got a top man who comes out of Leavesden from the film industry. It's all film industry, and we borrow the money.
But it's a really important point, because we're used to, as Brits, sitting by and watching all the value go back to the West Coast, and this is there's a really interesting opportunity in servicing that capital to be based here and have really successful British challenger companies. I mean, I don't think anybody's going to build a British Netflix, and God knows what's happening at the BBC. But I think that there is this enormous free sort of individual opportunity for all of us to build these great businesses.
I may ask to encourage the second question. Thank you, sir. I hope it's not about skydiving.
No, it isn't. David Phillips, I just would like to know from the panel, how much percentage investment do you make in permanent infrastructure, kit, technology, lighting, versus hiring it in?
Well, from Pip's point of view, it's 100% purchased. We do hire occasionally, but it's all our own infrastructure that was installed from the concepts of the company being built.
Yeah, from Stage 50, I mean, it's the production companies that hire in their favourite lighting company or whatever. We don't impose anything on them at this moment in time. But we realise that the lighting industry has changed dramatically, and that and we are looking at ways in which we can improve our offering to clients, because we don't necessarily think that the offerings they get at the moment are 100%.
Sorry, I didn't get a chance to answer your question. Resource Productions, we're a social enterprise. We have been going for 23 years without any core funding. I'm pleased to announce that we've been declared a national portfolio organisation by the Arts Council, which means we get funding for the next 3 years.
Bravo.
We hire our equipment out predominantly. Yeah.
And Marlow is really building the infrastructure. So we are in discussion with various amazing teams, including some people who aren't sitting too far away, about bringing in the best of the existing service companies onto site. And that's one of the things I really miss about working on lot. At Pinewood, it used to be 200 independent companies on lot, and in an era of corporatization, we really feel the lack of those service companies being based cheap by jowl. And that's, particularly in this really important zone to the west of London, there are a lot of those companies that would really love to be part of the journey, I think.
And may I ask, before I encourage the next question, Jamie, do you feel like your question was answered from earlier on, or would you like to readdress that whilst we have time?
It wasn't so much a question, it was just trying to make the point that people like Netflix and HBO, they come in and they expect to be able to pick up, very talented technicians. And as the demand for technicians has increased,
You may want to swap seats again, chaps.
Are they really putting enough effort into financing it? Because you and I agree that onset is really important.
It's essential.
The whole etiquette and understanding. If imagine you're a young 17, 18, 19-year-old person, you've never been on a film set before. It's an absolute zoo when you walk onto a set. You don't know what's happening. And unless you're there learning the etiquette and the diplomacy, a huge amount of diplomacy goes on in some jobs.
Well, Netflix already put money into the London Screen Academy. The lady who at runs their training program, allocated money to the London Screen Academy, which is actually backed by Working Title.
I guess the point I'm making, I come from I'm a camera operator on the floor, and I suppose the point I'm making is really not so much from the money that they're putting into academies, but the money they're putting into actually getting people onto the floor and seeing them through the process on the floor. So, which maybe it's a secondary thing that after they've been to college and they've understood a little bit, then they come to the floor, and then they need to be mentored by people like me that have been doing it for a long, long time.
Can I just jump in and say, I think...
Yes, and once after Lily has, we're going to jump on the last question in the audience.
Yeah, I think it's really important about bringing the next generation through and things like that. And you said about training, and it does take 5 years. It takes a lot of time, especially for these skilled technicians, to get to the stage where they can be a DOP and things like that. However, transferable skills, and I think there's a massive market that we haven't spoken about yet, which is that people are transitioning from one industry to another from the pandemic. I obviously come from quite a practical part of the industry, which is location managing and working with location managers. And a lot of the location managers I've met have been ex-military, or they have worked in, construction all their life. They're looking for something different, and I think we are looking for external people that have never thought about the industry before. But it's also about stepping up. So it's sort of looking at people that might have been a camera assistant all their life, and it's like, actually, don't take someone new and train them up. Who we already got that's amazing, that needs the opportunities. And I think we just need to start looking at that. We keep talking about this amazing wealth of talent we've got, blah, 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 but it's creating the opportunities for the people that already work within the industry. I've known people that have left the industry completely because they're not transitioning as quickly as they want to be, and they've all got bills to pay.
Very, very good point.
So I just think that we also need to start looking at the people that we constantly talk about as being amazing and talented, and making sure that they have got those opportunities to level up in themselves as well as training up this new talent. We can do it all at once. We are this amazing British film industry after all. So
one of the other things that was also missed is about including disabled talent, which we never addressed. It is a big issue, and it's very difficult. We are making in the skills plans that we have written. We have talked about piloting job share. Not easy, but it's still very much a pilot. But that's a viable way of introducing people with challenges and introducing our industry and making it more disabled friendly.
If we had more time, I'd like to ask you what advice you'd give parents and emerging talent for the industry coming in.
It is very exciting, but I would really, really be honest about, because we go a lot into schools. We run the BFI Film Academy. In fact, we made our first feature using the government Kickstarter scheme, where the young people were PAYE. So that was a absolutely disruptive model that we piloted, and that worked. But a lot of the parents, a lot of the careers advisors have no idea about the creative industries. They are clueless about it, and it still seems to be attracting people who know people whose nieces, whose uncles, whose parents have worked in the industry. There's no way of bringing in all these amazing talent that we're clearly talking a lot about, but have no gateway into this industry.
The other thing that really is surprising to probably everybody in this room, if you say the word freelance to somebody, they blanch.
I go regularly into a school that's at the doorstep of Marlow Studios, and they haven't a clue where Marlow Studios. I go into Bone End Academy, and they say, where's Marlow Studios? I said, it's down the road from you. And those young people are some of the most disadvantaged, and they don't even know that Marlow Studios is at their doorstep. So they've seen the road signs. It says, no, say no to Marlow Studios. That's how they know, unfortunately. But that's where we are talking. Great talent, but how there's no route into the industry. And then it's still very ableist. It's still very elitist. It's still very privileged. It's still bankrolled by parents. Yeah. I go in, and I'm being very honest. There was a Sikh boy who saw me week in, week out when I was at the training. And then one day when I was giving him a lift, he said, Abhi, can I ask you a question? And he said, I said, what? He said, how does somebody like you get into the industry?
Wow.
And he felt comfortable enough asking me because he was Sikh and he saw me. And I thought, that is not something we are addressing. That is really, and it's still ableist. It's still privileged in many, many respects. And so that is a huge barrier we have to overcome.
I think we need another panel. But because that is a fantastic thread. We have time for one more question from the gentleman in the corner here.
Yeah, I don't know if it's more of a question, but more of a contribution to this discussion. I went to university, but during university, we was all encouraged to go and get a certain amount of work experience. Me, more than most, went out and actually filled every waking day, minute, and hour I could find to do more. So I went and begged every facilities company in my local area. I ended up getting trained over my 3 years at university, and I finished up, get a job with them. And in between summers, I was working on Henson productions like the Hoops and construction site. I was a camera assistant. I even got jobs where I was actually doing camera operating for my guy I was assisting. I ended up doing second camera for him, and I got to learn a craft and a trade through people that actually had passion for it. But only from me wanting to. You cannot force people to find it, and you cannot force the right people to encourage it. There has to be a willingness from the people doing this. I've worked in this industry for 20 odd years, and I actually went through production, and I had gained some of those skills, then went into television production and some minor film. But now I've come out and worked in technology in the industry because I still have a passion for the industry. And I still go back to my university and talk about this as well and try and keep people encouraged about it. But there's so many different strands and avenues that people can explore. But it's finding how you pull that passion and niche out of them, as well as having the right resources, like this gentleman explained as well. Having the right people in place to encourage them. You need to pull the excitement out of them. And there's so much in our industry that we can actually really sort of give people, but I think it's just opening up the doors a little wider, and sometimes not the front ones to make them glossy. You almost need the dirty ones with all the paint on the walls and explain to them why this is relevant to make that glossy thing. That's my piece, and that's where I came from, and I'm still here 20 odd years.
There's a really interesting parallel problem we've got now, which is, absence of a crew. If you've got one credit, you're considered a hiring prospect. So the danger is people with not enough credits get onto a conveyor belt where they don't really know what they're doing. I witnessed this on a BBC show last year where location people didn't know what a contract was. They didn't know kind of what even a call sheet was, and this was a BBC show. So there's a real systemic risk for all of people who care about this, of making sure that we don't let people underprepared in an environment which is super skilled and needs a lot of us older generation to really pass on everything we know.
Can I mention something?
Well, we have a problem. We're out of time, I'm afraid. But I do suggest, yes, give it. Okay, the gods have spoken. Go, Lily. You got time.
Respond to you, but also ask the panel a question, because that's what you proposed as a bit of a catch-22, which I find is a constant in the industry. I started as an apprentice. I didn't want to go to uni, and I wanted to get into the industry, but knew no one. So I looked for many apprenticeships and got the one I got, and I'm still with the company now. However, I have since decided that I would like to pursue a degree. So I'm currently doing a degree myself. And someone approached me the other day that is in my course and said, I'm looking for work experience. Someone told me to speak to you. The amount they knew compared to what I knew about the industry baffled me. I was completely shocked, and I was thinking, how much are you paying to the knowledge you're getting? I ended up sitting there with 2 hours, and I sent them so many emails and people to address and actually get them just a placement. But it's exactly like you say, if people are told, right, you need to go to university to be able to work in the film industry, and then they come out and they go, well, I don't know anything, because they haven't been on a set, they've just done 3 years and had a lovely experience, which is great. How do we expect them to then get on set? Personally, for me, I think apprenticeships are amazing because they'd have that 50-50 where you get to earn money, you get to sit in an office, and you get someone to monitor you and make sure you do things safely. And I think that the industry should run off of them. But
Here. The gods have allowed one more question, it seems. A chap at the back, I think,
Very
has
short.
the mic.
I haven't been a chap.
Oh, there you are.
I could try.
I apologise, there's a lovely
If there's a
lady.
makeup artist, I'll try and keep it short. This is probably less directed at resource productions because I think I know the answer and I think it will be beautiful. Not that I don't want you to speak. I want you to speak more than you have. But there we are.
Yeah.
What is the film industry doing at the moment to measure its impact on social value and connect locally with local organisations to do so?
What was the question?
Social impact.
Social value, environmental, social and governance. What does the film industry or any of your companies do to measure social value and sort of measure its local impact?
Well, I'm just speaking personally. So we're obviously still in planning, so we're very much pre-startup. But so one of the things that I think people really have responded to is we're going to make sure that we publish an ESG thing for the first decade of our existence, just showing, benchmarking where we are and what our aspirations are. I mean, the joy for us is that Wickham has an amazing opportunity to participate in what we're doing. The deprivation index in Wickham is much more than local average, and Buckinghamshire is very privileged because it's got double the population in the creative industries. So we, I think, would like to focus on that, actually, just making sure that we hold our hands up and are held accountable. We're doing a lot on sustainability, training, education, transport even. We're, as part of our 106 offer, we're going to run a new bus service between Wickham and across rail at Maidenhead, stopping at the gates of the studio. So trying to make sure that people aren't so car dependent that people in Wickham can just come and either train or work at Marlow.
Can I make a point? I know you're going to stop me. Can I make a point? There is no such thing as a freelance apprenticeship at this moment in time. So that is one of the major problems we've got in our industry. Screen Skills and the Screen Alliance are trying to address it with the government to have some way of breaking up an apprenticeship so that an apprentice can work with a skilled practitioner of our industry for a period on a production and then go on to the next production with another skilled practitioner, and so they can gain their stars in apprenticeship. That is what's been mooted at the moment, and everybody's trying to get that moving because there is a huge pot of money available for apprenticeships in our industry, but we can't get hold of it because there's no such thing as a freelance apprenticeship.
Abhi and Lily, do you have any closing remarks regards to that and social impact?
Yeah, just building on what Roger just said, one of the things that the borough councils, the local councils probably don't quite get is that the industry is still largely freelance. So the emphasis on skills development, business skills development, they are self-employed people. That side often gets overlooked. The local enterprise partnerships go some way towards addressing it, but nearly not enough. But that's a big, we focus on the technical skills development of the person, but not how are they going to submit their tax returns, how are they going to invoice people, all of that. And the well-being side of things, those often get overlooked. Lily?
I was just going to comment this. It's very true. It's a freelance industry. I mean, I was very lucky to have my apprenticeship as a part of a levy, so I come from sort of a broadcasting background, and I did learn all that sort of invoicing and stuff like that on my apprenticeship. But I mean, you've got Screen Skills that do their trainee finder, and I think that is an amazing opportunity. It is short because it's only per production, but it's like a 12-month. I mean, my apprenticeship was only 12 months, and I was luckily kept on. I don't know if it's 12 months and then you're let go. If you do lose those contacts, if you're maybe not well-rounded enough to actually slot in with a production and find someone that's able to take you on to the next one with you, because we say about nepotism and people, your friend's friend got you in, but once your friend's got you in, it is sort of on you to stay in. So yeah, I mean, there's no such thing as a freelance apprenticeship.
The BO5 funding, everything is due to change on the 31st of March. So everybody's in the process of retendering. We're talking about Screen Skills. Everything is going to change come April. So yeah, that's another thing to look out for. So whatever we say now only holds true till the 31st of March. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to have to say thank you for those closing comments. They were fabulous. And thank you for everyone taking part in the panel. That's a wrap for this evening. We hopefully have maybe 5-10 minutes of some more networking and drinks, and hopefully you can ask any questions directly to the panellists that you didn't have the opportunity to do so during the session. And thank you for coming today, guys. It means a lot to be able to talk about our local economy.
Thank you to Christina.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christina.